But for now, I'd like to take it over to Joan Sutherland from Deakin to introduce the next speaker.
Thanks for that, Max. Very informative. So thanks for sharing all that information. Next, I would like to introduce Dr. Tiffany Gunning and Catherine Fraser, who are based in the Faculty of Science, Engineering and Built Environments at Deakin University. Tiffany and Catherine's major focus for the past few years has been developing student teamwork skills using a suite of strategies underpinned by self and peer assessment. So welcome, Tiffany and Catherine.
Thank you for the introduction, Joan. I find it really inspirational that we've all been able to come together today as a global community to share our experiences and learning in this space. And as such, I do want to acknowledge the traditional owners of our lands and pay my respect to our elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to thank our organisers today for the opportunity to walk people through the journey that we've had in SEBE over the last few years. And I think we'll just show you the screen at the moment. This was when we were supposed to go to Amsterdam earlier in the year, when we were all happy and in the sun. And oops, where are we going? And this is the reality now. Oops. So everybody, as we're sharing through this space, Catherine and I are actually here together today, but we have been working in isolation in this way for the last few months. So our project aims began, we were asked to find a teaching and learning strategy that encouraged our students to participate more widely in team projects. We'd had a lot of feedback from not only students, but from academics to tell us that they were having problems getting students to engage. We also wanted to develop student teamwork skills within these projects, as well as their ability to evaluate themselves and others to build their evaluative judgment skills. On the back of that, our unit chairs wanted to have evidence that the whole team was contributing and learning in these team projects. And we also wanted a strategy that could be generalised and scalable, not only across our faculty, but hopefully across our university. So a little bit of background, it was initiated around 5 years ago. So we did begin with a tool in 2015 called Spark Plus, but we have been transitioning to FeedbackFruits since 2018, as Max had described. So our main aim is to embed teamwork skill development into all of our courses across all year levels in both face-to-face and on online environments, because we want to make sure that when our graduates enter the world of work, they have actually got teamwork skills that they've developed and they can talk about to an employer. So our beginning in the self and peer review space was very humble. We started off with just one single unit. We chose this unit because it had a really poor student engagement history. So we made self and peer review of teamwork skills a requirement within this particular unit. We asked students to give us ratings and comments about the people in their team, but in an anonymous environment. And then that information was given back to the unit chair. Interestingly, we asked the students for feedback on what they thought of this particular strategy, and they gave it to us, and they gave it to us quite loudly. Why are you wasting our time developing teamwork skills? We're here to become engineers. So we got it wrong. We had assumed that students would understand why it's so important to develop teamwork skills in their unit. So that initiated a complete strategic approach turnaround, and we started to focus on our Deakin learning outcome of teamwork as a future employment opportunity skills development. So we started our new version in 2016. We had engaged around 12 units this time, and at the end of 2016, we asked the students to give us feedback again, and we were relieved to find out that around 79% of them had now recognised that teamwork was actually an important skill for their future career. Around 70% had now been able to link teamwork as an important graduate learning outcome, and around 75% of them could actually reflect on their teamwork skills by seeing those skills in other people. So that self and peer feedback was really working for us. The one thing that we really needed to know was how comfortable were they with us using that information to individualise a student's team mark within a team project. that we were a little bit anxious about. But what we found out is that students appreciated the opportunity to give feedback to their unit chairs about how well students were doing within their teams. So around 76% of students were telling us it's a good thing to have self and peer review within their team task. We started to scale up almost by accident through word of mouth. People were starting to say, hey, we want to use this in our units as well. The only problem was the current tool that we were using just wasn't cutting it for us anymore. We'd outgrown it, and thankfully, enter FeedbackFruits. So the FeedbackFruits could be integrated into our LMS. They were already in the self and peer review thinking space. They had customizable rubrics. And then when we started to have a chat to them, they were able to actually purpose build around our particular user case. And we were able to come up with the group contribution grading and group skills factor, which I'll talk about in a moment. And we're now currently working on a chaining project in the do tank. So this is an overview of how we're currently using self and peer review. It underpins most of our teamwork opportunities within our faculty. So what we basically do is once a student team has been set up, again, they work and develop their team, their skills as a team, but they come to a project outcome. So that is the accessible part of their team task. Now that has academic oversight, so it's marked by an academic. But then what we ask the students to do at the end of that project is to go back and self and peer assess against a set of criteria that the academic had preordained as being important components of what they should learn during this project. Then they are asked to give a review for all of their peers within their team against that criteria. Now, in FeedbackFruits, there's a lovely rubric that we were able to customise to whatever our academics were deeming important. We were able to also customise how that rubric was set up. So to try and mimic a more authentic case for our students, we use a rubric that has basically 4 levels, which is you're either at standard, like a valued team member. You could be above standard. You may have come from industry and have a lot of experience already, or you might be underperforming, or maybe you just haven't engaged. And so based on the review that we get from students about their team members, we're able to feed that information back into FeedbackFruits, and they will come up with an individualization opportunity. So we've called this the group skills factor. So it's based on what the students have been able to peer review against each other. And if they come out at or above expectations, we see that as a very good opportunity to give them 100% of the team mark. If we find out that their certain team members are falling below standard, then that's evidence to the unit chair to actually go and delve a little bit further to see what had actually happened in that particular task. Had something gone wrong? Did they need to have a conversation with certain students? But if students just simply had not engaged with the task, then we've encouraged students to actually give the not demonstrated value, which would actually give them a 0 mark for their team project. So for the future, when we start talking about our do tank, the do tank that we're currently in is, it's a chaining do tank, because what we found is that not only do we want students to develop self and peer reflective opportunities, but we need to actually develop their skill sets as well. So we had them doing different tasks, and within our LMS, they have to go to different areas at different times to complete different tasks. And we were finding that they were getting a little bit lost and not quite understanding what it was that we were hoping to achieve with this. So what we need to do now through our do tank is find a great ways to actually chain different tasks within FeedbackFruit together, so that students are actually taken on a guided journey throughout their entire experience in that unit. So for example, in the flow that we've got here is we actually ask students to do a self-reflection before they start their teamwork to see what their confidence levels are looking like in certain areas. Then when they're actually working within their team, we get them to do a formative form of self and peer review. Then they do a summative form of self and peer review. And then when that's all said and done, we ask them to give us their experience again. They're asked to compare how they went from where they were before the unit started to where they come at the end. Then we actually bring that into a reflection task. So that is just a lead in to the sorts of things we're trying to do with the do tank that's coming up. So we know that there are a few things that are really vital in getting this up and running, because at the moment we are currently supporting over 50 units to implement self and peer review across our faculty. We're currently in the final stages. At the moment, we've got about 24 units who are using it this trimester, and we're hoping to make it implemented this trimester and go to business as usual in this space. But we know that we do have to give both students and academics a lot of support in this space to get them started. So it was really important for us to ensure that we've got appropriate care packages, that we've upskilled the necessary people that are involved. And we need to make sure that we're strategically targeting units across courses to make sure that we've actually built self and peer review up as a skill for our students. We also know that given the current circumstances, some challenges have also highlighted some opportunities, and we've now started to look at other tools within the FeedbackFruit suite, and we're looking at peer review tools that now can help us to support poster and face-to-face presentations in an online mode, which has been very exciting. So I'd like to say thank you for listening. These are my contact details, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks for that, Tiffany and Catherine. And firstly, I'd just like to say sorry about missing your trip to Amsterdam, maybe next year, hey? We do have a few questions for you, actually. So I'll take it from the top. So how did you deal with students picking on each other or gaming the system if they didn't like someone given you were giving them a score?
Okay. So when we first implement this, we do ensure that we have sold the strategy to our students. We ensure that they understand that they're students at our university and they have to abide by our student code of conduct. So we make sure that before students actually enter into this strategy, that they know what they're supposed to be doing. We also know that we've got academic oversight in everything that's being done. In some cases where we have had problems, we've actually pulled teams together and acted as a panel to actually act as an intervention for students if they're struggling in that space. But generally speaking, what we find is as soon as students are holding each other accountable in a team project, we actually get really good buy-in from students, and they do the right thing. So the problems have been a lot less than what we had first anticipated.
That's good to hear. Thank you for that. Another one around expectations. So if they're above expectations, should they be given more than the team mark?
We have come across this one as well. So what we've basically said is for a student to meet their unit learning outcomes, we have a set of minimum standards. So in our rubric, we make sure that at standard is where our line is drawn. So if they're below standard, we need to follow that up. But we also do acknowledge that we do have people who are in our unit that can be at industry standard already. Now, there is enough leeway for an academic to have oversight in this space. If they believe that somebody has gone over and above what was required by that task, there is the opportunity to actually award additional marks. But what we're basically saying to students is if you've met the minimum standard and above, you'll get the team mark. You can't get more than the team mark unless there's an extenuating circumstance that the unit chair has deemed necessary.
Mm-hmm. That can be very challenging in a lot of situations, not just FeedbackFruits. So it's good to see how you're dealing with it. We do have a couple of other questions, but due to time, what I'm going to do is defer these for you guys to answer later, and then I'm going to introduce our next speaker. But thank you so much, both Tiffany and Catherine.
Thanks for having us.